This week on the Push Pull Legs podcast, it is a third space education takeover. We talk about rehab, education, and personal training. Alright, 3, 2, 1. This is a third space takeover. Alright guys, welcome to the Push Pull Legs podcast. As you've noticed, I'm not here with Dan. I am here with Mr. Josh Silverman and Henry Howe from Third Space. Hello guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Wow, bring it in. You both have a podcast before, but yeah, let's talk to each other.
I'm a bit disappointed. I thought you were going to say something about a tin opener or something for the intro, but
we pre-recorded our conversation that we just done about a tin opener and a penis, which is apparently Henry's chat today, so we're good.
I'm still rocking in a corner.
So basically, we were expecting one more education team coordinator person, the lovely Carl Wilson, but he's currently stuck on a train, and
he's absolutely sacked.
I know. Basically, he couldn't turn up. Couldn't be bothered. That's what I heard. So he's currently on WhatsApp. We'll probably just replay some voice notes if he wants to have any chimes of wisdom. And his lovely, Midlands voice. He's got some of the best. He's got the best voice out of all of us as well.
Malvern.
It would have been.
He's soothing.
It would have been superb. So we've got Henry.
What was that? So basically, education guys have to go on a course to semi-know how to teach. These guys still don't know how to teach, but anyway, they have to go on a course to know how to teach. What did the tutor say to Carl Henry? That he had what? Is that his voice?
Oh, she was digging him. She basically said he had such a calming, hypnotic tone.
Hypnotic tone.
She does. Yeah, like every course that we teach together, it seems that I always bring that up, and it's just going to be like, yeah. He's a lot calmer than us as well. He kind of comes across a lot calmer than we do. We're a little bit antsy. He's a bit dreamy.
Voice is like liquid gold.
So Dan's not with us today because apparently Paris has no internet, as we well know. He is obviously training his celebrity client, so he's away. You probably see him on his Instagram doing nothing, sitting in his room all day, and yeah. But he's got a dog, so I'm going to be down in Bath very soon.
Oh, he's got a miniature Dachshund.
He's a miniature Dachshund. So
my mother-in-law's got one of them. She's an absolute nutter.
It looks beautiful. So Isabel and Mini Dachshund, Dan's Instagram following is going to go up by at least 10k over the next week. It's going to be amazing. Right. So we're going to briefly explain everything kind of personal trainery, education, what we do at Third Space, and I think we kind of need to know Henry's expertise, because Josh, this is your 4th appearance on this show, so I think we're already bored of you, apparently.
I'm not surprised.
No. So, Henry, without further ado, mate, who are you? What do you do? Area of expertise? What the hell?
What the hell? So I am Henry, already been introduced. Thank you very much, Tom. So I work for Third Space and have done for 6.5 years over in Canary Wharf. I'm a registered osteopath and a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer before I went and studied osteopathy, and frankly, I didn't really think I was going to return to the exercise or fitness industry, whatever you want to call it. But to be honest with you, I think the more I started learning about osteopathy, the more I realised that exercise is really where change happens. And whilst osteopathy is a great platform for seeing people in pain and the diagnostic side of things, I don't think I'll ever really walk away from a gym. So yeah, that's me really. As I say, I did a Masters in Osteopathy at the British College of Osteopathic Medicine, and then PT education. Most recently, I've done Exos. Back in the day, I did a couple of pull check courses, which I did really, really enjoy.
Yes, you did.
Talking to rocks.
Not talking to rocks, stacking rocks. Talking to crystals.
Rocks. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Talking to crystals? Is that what it was? Cool.
I didn't get that far.
Stacks rocks, get it? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that far. You never guess why. But anyway, so yeah, did a bit of the pull check stuff, all of the UKSCA workshops, and yeah.
Grey Institute as well, wasn't it?
Sorry?
Grey Institute stuff as well,
Oh yeah. I've done the CAPS Grey Institute certification, yeah, and a couple of workshops on that.
All the slingy things moving like all over the place all the time. That's
all
Gary
all planes.
All the planes of motion. Basically, if you spin around, people will just kind of glide in themselves. Josh, if anybody doesn't know who you are, Jesus Christ, where have they been? But if you might as well introduce yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm Josh, head of education at Third Space. I'm also head of academy at LD&M, which Tom still can't say the name, but that's fine. Head of the academy at LD&M.
What did I say? LD&M.
Oh, LD&M. Or LD&M.
I had speech therapy as a child.
Evidently. My postgrad is in applied nutrition and supplementation. So I wouldn't say I was an expert in nutrition because obviously the more I've sort of read, the more I realise we have no idea what's going on when it comes to nutrition. But more recently, going into the kind of exercise mechanics type of thing, people call me the FMS guy. People call me the RTS guy. People call me other words. I'm not going to say what it is. But yeah, that's about me. Been in the industry for about 12 years, was a lecturer, and yeah, mainly an educator now. That's it.
Mainly an educator. I mean, Josh wanted me to introduce myself as well. But if you haven't listened to this show...
Yeah, Tom. As being as, we've got rid of Dan, everyone's obviously coming on to hear me. This is Josh and Henry's podcast, so who are you, Tom?
Basically, is this the replacement? Basically, I'm not going to be on it next week, and you two are just going to take over. That's what's happening, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. If anybody doesn't know my background... Basically, go back to listen to episode 1, 2, 3, all the way to 189. I did an S&C degree at Middlesex University, did my master's degree in sports performance and biomechanics, worked in pro sport for a little bit, then decided that I'd work with Gen Pop. Actually did a little bit of work for Carl Wilson as a biomechanics specialist for a company called Dartfish, and that's how I got my job at Third Space. Because I was doing what was then 6.5 years ago their education system, and I looked at all of their mechanics of their slides, and then they were like, "Oh, you know what the foot is?" I was like, "Yeah, I know where the foot is," and then they gave me a job. It was wonderful. So yeah, Carl employed me, and now we sit on the same panel together. It's amazing.
Nice. So for those of people that don't know who Carl is is the other quarter of the education team. See that? Great maths.
No, it took. There was there was a gap before you said that.
Yeah, you only got that because you just ate a pizza.
yeah, exactly, pizza. Carl was the other quarter, and Carl, we was just reading his bio as it goes. That's how we know this. But we've been in the industry for 20 years. Biomechanics. Is it masters in biomechanics? Was it physiology?
I always thought his master's degree was in physiology or kinesiology or something like that.
I think. Yeah.
Kinesiology, biomechanics, they're all
human body in the foot and the ankle and all that stuff. So
how it moves.
No, I've got it. MSc Sport and Exercise Science.
Okay, we wasn't none of them. Right, but physiology is part of sports and exercise science, so I think, and biomechanics is as well. So we got it right. It's all the same. Yeah, it's all the same.
It's all the same. But yeah, well, basically, then what we'll want to do is really chat about. I guess we got a bunch of questions as well. Apparently. My followers tend to not give me very serious questions, and Josh's do. So we're going to voucher for yours. And then Henry's clients apparently just want to ask him questions. They were like, we better ask those guys and not you, Henry, is what I'm taking that as really what's happening to your clients. Okay, cool. So we're going to look at what we do internally at in Third Space, I guess, educationally, and what people should start to look at if they want, or if they are personal trainers, or even if they're not. Right, for the general pop, I think some of the questions were around about that and where people should be getting their information from. So this will probably be one of the most educationally and take notes of this podcast, because me and Dan will be back to talking about cereal and protein bars next week. So take it where you can.
We can talk about protein bars.
I mean, we can.
Josh knows loads about protein.
Obviously, I'm the nutrition guy. I know about protein. I know what it is.
I like the London Muscle Wafer things. They were good when you gave us some of them.
Oh, they were. Little wafer.
Yeah, they're decent.
Where are they gone? Why are you still giving away for free?
Let's move on about that.
All right, brilliant. That was Jesus Christ. They were great when they were free. Didn't want to pay. Right.
It's all. There was one question that actually is a good lead-in, to be fair.
Yeah.
Which, what the hell was my stories all about the other day? And I'll quickly just read what I put up. I put up, a real teacher will create an environment that allows learners to fail again, and figure out their own way through exploration. A real teacher will not get frustrated because people are getting it wrong or doing something that doesn't fit their bias. So next time you hear someone who thinks they're a teacher talk about do, don't, right or wrong, just sip on your tea and move on, basically. So the question was, what do we think education actually is? And I'm going to wait for you guys to answer first. So what is education? Everyone's always like, I want to do a course, I want to do education. What do you think education actually is?
Henry, you can go first.
Okay. Josh, you mean to people, right? What are people looking for when they're seeking education?
No. I mean, we are educators. Yeah. So people, I think, out there, the reason why people believe they're a bad learner or they can't learn or they hated school is because school was the lock to education, as in school got in the way of education. So my question to you as educators is, what do you feel education is? How would you summarize how to educate someone?
Educate someone?
Yeah, and what is it exactly? As in, what is the bigger picture of education, or how to educate someone, etc., etc.? However you want to answer it.
Well, I think the first thing I would open with maybe is what I have learned. So, I mean, I've been in this role since January, February, and one of the biggest things I've learned is that you've really got to know who you're teaching, and you know them in a group for sure, but also know them as individuals and what their interests are, what they like, what they dislike. Yeah, that for me is one of the biggest lessons. Is you God knows how people walk into a room of completely new people and teach them and have all their information absorbed, because it's a complete game changer when you really know who you're talking to. So that would be my opening piece, really, is know your student, you know.
Okay. Decent.
Yeah, I think knowing the student stuff would be a big one, but then I guess if we're teaching like external courses, most of the time we can't do that. So I guess the audience that would resonate and come to you would generally be speaking, well, hopefully either speaking the same language, they've already probably paid or come to hear you listen anyway. So it's, I don't know, speaking or imparting in some sort of engaging way. But Josh said self-discovery. That's why I feel like teach back self-discovery learning is one of the bigger things that I like to try and do, to impart, kind of guide them towards an answer. Maybe, hopefully I know what I'm talking about when we're doing it, but we're going to let them get there in their own way, or let somebody get there in their own way, and it's going to resonate with them if they create their analogy or create their own journey to get there. But if education, I guess is it the willingness? I don't know, it's the willingness or want to be a better yourself in a pathway to be educated, or education, surely.
I mean, it's all about progression, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about progression. It's people who've got questions and they want answers. What their motivation for that is going to be different, right? Some people, they want to be educated to the point where they can just simply answer the questions from their clients in a more kind of credible or evidence-based way. Some people are going to want to be able to answer the questions coming from other trainers. So I guess that's almost a bit of a status thing, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, it's all about progression and development for sure. One thing I was going to say.
Do you want to hear the four? Oh, sorry. The computer lagged, so I thought you'd finished. So.
Right.
No, it's just Henry's face.
It's been down. I've probably not finished. No, Tom was saying, it's difficult if you're teaching external courses. Yeah. So I mean, I was obviously answering that very much from the angle of I know who I'm teaching. I know the company they work for. Most of them I know what they're getting paid. So I know a lot about them already. But even then, is there any reason why people who sign up for an external course can't give a bit more information about themselves prior? I think there's nothing wrong with sending out questionnaires and getting an idea of understanding and what people they want to come and listen to you, but why not send out questionnaires and ask what their big points that they want to take away from the weekend are, for example. In this day and age, technology is a doddle, isn't it?
So yeah, I mean, I went into it for, let's say, mainstream education places like universities, colleges, whatever, in order to go to an outstanding of Ofsted's requirements, which is what they look at for being the best, teachers and learners and whatever. And the four major things that I always looked at was One, teach backwards. So what you mean by that is, what is the end goal? As in, where do you want this person to finish? And so you fill it from that. You don't just start from foundation knowledge and build. It's like, well, what's the end point? So for instance, in the third space structure, we knew that the end point was always going to be understanding the basics of individual elements like rehab, nutrition, sports performance, and then specializing. So that's how we fill the lesson, or that's how we fill the plan of education, it's teaching backwards. The second one is called the lazy teacher, which I always used to use, because A, it requires hardly any planning, but B, it's actually better. And it's that thing that I was saying about exploration and failing. So the idea, you actually allow the learner to find the answer rather than giving it to them. So I used to do some lessons sometimes where I'd never answer a question. I'd always answer it with another question. And they had to find the answer in themselves, basically through discovery or whatever, which is, it's great when someone tells you you've got to cover a biomechanics class, and I'm like, I have no idea what a vector is or whatever like that at that point. So I'm like, yeah, cool. So that someone says to me, what is a vector? And I go, what isn't a vector? Or something like that. And then
so philosophical, Josh.
This sounds like a Bond villain.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, the Silverman. Then another one was allowing every person in the room to feel challenged, but also progressed at the end of the day. And this is what's known as differentiation, whether that's through the questioning types or the activities or whatever, where actually you want the smartest in the room to not come away thinking, oh, I kind of knew all that, great. And you don't want the less capable person in the room come away thinking, oh my God, none of that made sense. And you pitch everything at stretching every individual learner at their own pace, if that makes sense. So in school, they used to do it as sets. They used to put dumb people in dumb sets and smart people in smart sets. And there was actually a lot of studies done on this, where what they did, they went into private schools and they basically found the brightest students, told them, listen, you are going into the lowest set because you aren't the brightest after your exam results. Then they went to the students that weren't so bright, people like me at school, where they'd go, oh my God, you've done really well in your exams. We're going to put you at the top set, A. So they numbered them A, B, C, and D. Just by, even though they taught them the exact same stuff, at the end of the year, the people that were the brightest actually, technically in the classes, failed exams or got the lowest grades. And the people that were told they were the brightest got the highest grades. So they started getting rid of, in a lot of the schools, the grade criteria of top set, lower set, mid set, and all that sort of stuff. They still do it in secondary school, which is stupid. But it was actually, you should have differentiated tasks, but you're not telling people what they are. So everyone feels stretched in the room, so that when it comes to it, everyone's getting questioned and everyone's coming up with the same stumbling points. Like, not everyone's getting it right straight away, like, oh, I don't know. But it seems to everyone that everyone's getting challenged, if that makes sense.
100%. There was something that when I think when we started going through it, I don't know whether it was in it's probably actually taught from you, Josh, where you kind of enable the maybe the smartest person in the room and maybe the not so smartest person in the room, but that smartest person's gonna kind of help teach everybody else as well. So you're enabling them, you're challenging them by saying, I'm going to challenge your knowledge, you're going to teach it to these guys, and you're going to bring them up to what is the standard, and they're going to feel a sense of achievement by doing that. Also, these people are going to get the education they had. So that's another way of tackling that kind of workshop, I guess.
Yeah, it's known as Bloom's taxonomy, which is like the hierarchy of thinking. There's also de Bono's hats, which is a similar thing, where it's like the basic first level of thinking when you're coming into learning and when you're coming into applying stuff is just comprehension. Do I know? So if I said to Henry, what is this muscle? He could point at it and say, that's a bicep, because that's the only muscle that matters. That's a bicep. Then you go, okay, tell me about the muscle. So now we're going into the knowledge aspect of, well, it's Josh's muscle, so it's massive, it's really strong.
Wow.
Obviously.
Wow.
It's mine. It's Josh's, etc., etc. Okay. Now analyze the muscle, compare and contrast it to other muscles. Well, it only moves one joint, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now evaluate it against another muscle. Okay. But anyway, that's a higher level of kind of thinking, where it's just name, knowledge, analyze, compare, evaluate, feelings into it, and make it better, whatever it is. Anyway, but what that highlights is actually, and this is why we wanted to kind of bring it in as well, is when you're looking at educational seminars or when you're looking at workshops, a lot of the stuff out in the fitness industry is not true education. it's a workshop, yes, where you get taught some stuff, you go and do it, but you don't really understand it, or you don't really know much about it. And I think Henry's kind of put on this before. Whereas if you've got an actual teacher or an educator, you'll come away not knowing quite how you got there, but you've not only just got some knowledge on it, but you understand the middle ground of the application, the comparisons of it, the evaluation, the analysis of it, then applying it. Because apply is the last level. You can't just give someone something, go and apply it, and expect good results if they don't understand all the levels before of what it's good for, what it's not good for, etc., etc. But yeah, that's the third thing. Then the fourth thing is actually making people fail. They do this in, I think it's Japan. When the people start their last sort of, I don't know what it is, whether it's secondary school or college or whatever, the first week they're told in 2 weeks' time you're having an exam. That exam will tell you whether or not you can hit a high grade. And they make them sit an exam in 2 weeks and put loads of stress on them, make them all fail, so that they understand that failure is going to happen and it's fine to happen, but we just need to learn from it. So allowing someone to fail and get stuff wrong, not going, you're an idiot, but getting things wrong. And that's education, really, really simple.
Done. Right, podcast done. Bam. Easy. Henry, you were talking about something to do with assessments in kind of relaying what Josh was saying.
Yeah, Josh sort of referenced it. It's a vicious cycle, really, because personal trainers want more tools. They want more toys. They want to finish a course on a Sunday, and on Monday they can bring their clients who maybe they've told they're sitting a new course and show them off, right? And as a result of that, a lot of dare I say it, quote unquote, educators, they appease that. They give them a barrage of assessments, or a long list of exercises that are deemed to be kind of specifically only for rehabilitation, for example, or specifically only corrective, should we say, in like a non-injured population, and really they don't give that group of people what they really need, which is some kind of philosophy for what the body needs to do. They don't teach people, when pain happens, what's happening, what is that person experiencing. They don't give them a kind of a philosophy. In saying that, I was on one course once with you were on it as well, actually, with Nicole Rodriguez.
Yes.
And she actually flipped it round to us, because people were saying, tell me how much someone should squat, tell me how much someone should da da da. And she flipped it round and said, no, you tell me, for a male, how many, I can't think what the example was, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're trying to get people to think about.
I remember that exact conversation, because it flipped everybody. I don't think a lot of people in that room had a general standard of what they would like to see. She had a standard of what she'd like to see in 6 to 12 months of training with her, right? That was what the general standard would be.
Some people hated that conversation.
They truly hated, because they were like, it depends on this, it depends on the industry, where they come from. And she was like, all right, you've got 12 months with them, they're going to be perfect. Where are you going to be? Hypothetically, where are you going to be? And they were like, you mean starting position? How old are they? It's like, no, just you're a perfect client. It doesn't matter. It's just hypothetical. And they just, it was a massive stumbling block.
And just to finish off what I was talking about is, PTs, etc. They should be, what's wrong with turning up on Monday after doing a course and just saying, I understand that a lot better now. Why do you have to say, I've got 3 new assessments I'm going to do on your hip? Do you know what I mean? What's wrong with rocking up on a Monday and be like, I really, really get it now. It was really, really thought-provoking. That was my point, really.
I think
God, there's a cat.
I think
there's a cat that's like about to jump on Josh.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to like PTs never want to admit that actually what they need is a deeper understanding of what they've already got. They generally want something new, something that must be the answer. Like a client, right? A client never wants to hear, just don't eat as much. They want to know, what do I need to eat to get to X? And a PT is the same. It's like, I've been trying the squats, I've been trying this tool that I've been using, I've been trying this exercise. Maybe not been trying it right because they don't know the background behind it, and I understand it more, I know the intricacies. But I think it comes down to that. It comes down to the fact that a PT just doesn't ever want to just understand more which they don't think, because they don't know that high level of thinking, understanding, and having that knowledge base will actually increase and improve the application of it anyway, which will then increase results. They want an assessment, then they want a corrective based on that assessment, because that's going to fix my client. That's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Because we live in that culture where we go to a GP and are expecting a magic pill to do something. Therefore, this will get there, and not realising that it's probably going to be a little bit longer process than that. But that's what I feel like we're always going to be fighting, either as rehabbers or coaches, and realising that it takes a long time to make change. And it's going to happen within that educationally as well, because a deeper understanding is going to take time. It's going to take kind of being that application, the applied nature of it over time. It's not like this quick assessment, bam, 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 go. But going to courses and reaffirming it's going to be far better.
Yeah, and I think rehab is the biggest one for me. Before I met Henry, like about a year and a bit ago or whatever, like I honestly believe, because I'm not into the rehab side of things, even though I should be because of my issues. But
you're about to be, mate.
Yeah. But what I always thought, right, I go to an osteo, they're going to tell me, or a chiro, they're going to tell me exactly what's wrong. They're going to clip me in a certain position. I'm fixed. Like, and then, okay, now this has got a pain here. They're going to go and stick a needle in that. And then there we go. Scar tissue's gone, fixed. So that's what I thought it was, until I then went to Henry and he crushed all those dreams. Because the thing that I said, right, my hip's hurting. He added a bit of traction, went, well, yeah, could be this, could be that. What should I do? Just add some load gradually. It might work. It might. I'm like, who's this guy? I've been going to these chiros, they've been adjusting me and then after a while, I was like, oh damn, yeah, okay, I get it now. It's just not as simple as that. But that was again bad knowledge. I thought about the application. I didn't understand and comprehend the knowledge behind it, I guess. But yeah.
There's an interesting question off that, because I'm going to guarantee some of the general pop of our listenership will want to know is, Henry, why did you become an osteo and not a physio or a chiro? And what is the difference between all the three of those?
What the hell is the difference? I don't even know.
Who knows the difference? I mean, we've had a physiotherapist, we've had a couple of physios on the show, and they don't know. They have no idea. I mean, Doug doesn't know.
I knew this was going to come
basically, every single time I see Doug Tannehill, I say, you're not a real physio. So tell me why you're not a real physio.
Okay. So the first question was, why did I choose osteo?
Yeah.
And the reason I chose it was different to what I believe now. So I'm just going to tell you what a personal trainer who is about to study as an osteo has said in their justification. So I chose it. Firstly, I came to a point in my fitness career really where I seemed to attract people in pain,
wow.
and you know, not in a sadistic way, but I enjoyed working with people in pain. I felt like the connection that you made with people was more valuable than aesthetic reasons. I'm not saying it's going to be like that in every single person, but that's the way I felt at the time.
No, Henry, be honest. You used to break your clients. You needed to know how to.
No, that's not the case. Not the case. So, and don't forget as well, you know, the whole pull check stuff. There was a real angle there.
For breaking clients, 100%. I 100% agree.
They used hot stones and hot rocks then in the
Do you know what? I can remember so little of quack stuff. I did. I probably shouldn't have said quack stuff. I've said it now. There's always the bleep.
Sorry, I think over the last few episodes that we've said harsher stuff about stuff. We're okay.
Oh, Jesus! I'm going to crack it up anyway.
In your intro, Henry, you forgot to mention that you were actually a naturopathic medicine practitioner as well, aren't you?
No, I was declined the certificate because I didn't
part of your course.
osteopathy.
So you're alternative medicine, is that what you're saying?
Technically, I am complementary healthcare. Yeah.
Ooh.
No. Now you've been a politician. Naturopathic medicine.
No, but I didn't get that certificate because I refused to attend cranial osteopathy. So.
Okay. You're lucky. Carry on. You're not fired today. Okay. Congratulations.
Lives to fight another day. Okay, so anyway, so I had already started to work with people in pain more frequently, and it was stimulating. So what I wanted to do was get a platform for that because I think, you know, personal trainers often hate calling themselves personal trainers, don't they? They're a corrective exercise specialist, they're a strength and conditioning coach, they're a nutrition coach, they're a body transformation coach. Whatever way they can possibly avoid calling themselves a personal trainer. So I wanted a platform because I couldn't get myself to a position where I was only working with people in pain. And frankly, it was just I knew a couple of really good osteopaths, and I'd go on these courses with them. I'd talk to them, and I was like, I want that kind of knowledge. So that was why I chose it. In terms of why I didn't choose what's it called, physiotherapy. I didn't choose physiotherapy because I wasn't interested in the far more kind of wide-spanning conditions that they are taught how to rehabilitate. So kind of the non-musculoskeletal ones. So I wanted to spend 4 years working in musculoskeletal healthcare rather than 3 years working in a much broader range, as it were. And obviously you get the opportunity to specialise, and the time they spend on their rotations in things like, you know, stroke rehab and so on and so forth are invaluable. I'm sure they're great for your brain, but that was the decision I made. Now, should we talk about osteophysio, chiro, massage?
Yeah.
There's another wacky one called osteopractor.
Osteopractor?
Lol. Yeah, it's absolute cobblers. Won't go down that rabbit hole. So did you say people don't know the difference between them?
100%, yeah. The average Joe on the street.
No, sorry, I mean the physios that you'd spoken to.
Oh, no, they did. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Well, look, firstly, I mean, really the only difference might be what they studied and where they studied it, the letters after their name. So I treat back pain. You know, the guy Alex you had on, he's a physio, he treats back pain. So what we do, and the people we see are the same people, there's no two ways about it. Historically, what we would have said is that osteopaths are perhaps looking a little bit further away from the injury site as to causes. But to be honest with you now, any physiotherapist, any chiropractor worth their salt will also be doing that. Historically, physios were far better about administering, designing exercise rehabilitation programs, but again, any kind of osteopath worth their salt should be doing that as well. Although I'll tell you right now, the exercise rehabilitation education on the osteopathy degrees is pretty woeful. Although some of the rehab I see coming out of physiotherapy is equally poor. So the difference is just the study between osteo and physio. Chiropractic, I think, are potentially holding on to their identity a little bit more. Historically, chiropractors were very interested / borderline obsessive about spinal alignment, and wherever an issue is in the body, they're always wanting to look at spinal alignment. They like their before and after, well, before, maybe not after, x-rays. Whether or not that's diagnostic or a sales pitch, I don't know. But, you know, my favourite healthcare educator is a chiropractor, a guy called Greg Lehman, Canadian guy. He's a physio and he's a chiropractor. But, you know, he is a chiropractor. The best...
But not an osteo, interestingly.
No, but...
so the chiropractor's better than osteos then, right?
Sorry?
So chiropractors are better than osteos, is that what you just admitted?
Just admitted. Your favourite educator is not an osteopath.
Mate, I know...
You just said you wish you studied chiropractor.
Sorry?
You just said you wish you studied chiropractic rather than osteopathy. That's what you just said.
I didn't hear that. But anyway, no, look... you've made me lose my little blighter. I think where my angle was, look, the best of each discipline will usually agree, because we're not dealing with like opinion-based stuff. We're dealing with medicine, and if there's evidence that kind of indicates we should be treating people in a certain way, I mean, I'm not sure that exists right now. We're getting far more information on what we shouldn't be doing with people and what's maybe potentially harmful or just completely ineffective. Then we should be listening to that evidence. So best osteo, best physio, best chiro, best massage therapist, best personal trainer, you would hope are doing or agreeing on the same things. Josh has got his hand up.
I know, he's got a hand up.
It's just easier because otherwise I just interject at the wrong time because the computer's a bit laggy. So I think there's a gap and it's not. The biggest question for me on that is, how do you choose which one you go to? So what would be the difference between me going, I'm going to go to a physio against, I'm going to go to an osteo again? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Drop me an email. Tell me where you live. I'll find one. It's quite difficult. I'd be very, very suspicious of anybody who has a predominantly manual therapy oriented treatment option. So what I mean by that is massage, manipulation, stretching, acupuncture.
Whoa, stop. Second one, manipulation. You're telling me that that's not going to realign my spine and my hips.
That's the good one, Henry. Jesus Christ.
All I want is a click.
That's
if I'm booking you, mate, for an hour, all I want to hear is that. That's all I want to hear.
Listen, Josh, I'm afraid we've just shot Bambi. Manipulation does not do that.
Oh, God.
No, in all seriousness, yeah. So I would be incredibly suspicious of anybody who really obsessed over the effects of manual therapy on the body, whether or not they're saying you've got a elevated shoulder or they're breaking down scar tissue or so on and so forth. So I'd be pretty suspicious of that. Obviously, if you're seeing a physiotherapist, they should be chartered. If they're seeing an osteopath, they should be registered. You can check that on GEOS website, Osteo, and I guess Chartered Society of Physiotherapists. So you want that to be happening. And like the big one is just going to be word of mouth, obviously. Go on then, young Joshua.
Go on, Josh.
Got another question. What's your thoughts? Because this is another, I would say, an obsession with PTs or even physios, or more so the earlier on ones, the guys that are just starting. Have you got your hands up now?
I'm just stretching.
No, he's just stretching. Sorry.
Yeah.
Doesn't work, by the way, stretching. Anyway.
It seems to me that there's a lot of stuff around patterns going on. So, for instance, I've heard people go, that right shoulder is because of your left hip and then your right ankle, or you're in this type of pattern or this type of sling, and this left hand affects your right foot. So what we're going to do is we're going to wiggle your middle finger, and that's going to help you with your knee pain. Do you see what I mean? All those things that piece together going, it's originating from here because someone can see it. That seems to me to be a big thing that PTs start doing, like postural analysis, going, that right shoulder is because of your left hip and blah, 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 and those links. Yeah, thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
This is
Bambi's down again. No, look, I suppose my industry is probably responsible for a lot of those ideas. And essentially people like them, don't they? Because they're easy to see. Anyone can pull out an anatomy drawing and do a little dot to dot. You know, I could connect my bloody earlobe to my, I don't know what, if I went on long enough. So people like them, you know, they like physical findings, but the reality is that we don't really see these kinds of patterns very often. There are a plethora of things in the body that we only have one of, so I would say that that, and also how kind of ambidextrous we are, how we chew food on one side of our mouth, how we've got one strong eye. Maybe the body's just, you know, meant to be imperfect, meant to be asymmetrical. Some of the best movies in the game are just the best compensators, right? So, yeah, I don't know what the obsession is. I think those kinds of approaches are, you know, maybe attract people that are searching for a level of complexity that doesn't exist. But
I knew it was coming. I love that trap line. That's Henry's, like, what do you call it? You're going to trademark that. You're going to trademark it. That's his, like, catchphrase.
So say it again for us, Henry. A level of complexity that doesn't exist.
Yeah, people. You know, I'll be honest. A lot of the guys on those courses, they're sharp. They're bright people. But anyway, I'll say it without being interrupted, Joshua. Yeah. So sorry. You know, it's people searching for a level of complexity that A, doesn't exist, but B, fortunately, isn't really required to get people better.
Fair enough.
I think that's a good segue into another question. But yeah, go on.
And also, I believe the philosophies that Josh was talking about was PRI, anatomy and motion.
Not just that. No, not just that.
Two of them definitely are.
Anatomy trains, that's another big one.
Absolutely, they do obviously go into that, but you've got NASM that goes into that sort of stuff.
So NASM's like
that's osteopathy classically.
That's the overactive, underactive stuff, right?
Yeah.
I bought into that
postural analysis
when I
and
was
in
going through
massage courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that fascia lines.
Fascial lines, yeah, 100%. That's Gary Gray, though, right? Fascial lines, fascial slings.
No, that's the Thomas Myers anatomy traits.
So basically, what we've realised there, we've rattled off about 6-7 different theories.
Yeah,
of realising this is how confusing it can be within we could say us three as educators relatively have picked our philosophies or realised that there's lots out there, but pick the stuff that works.
Yeah, I just want to reference two studies. I'd have to dig if your listeners want the references. I'll have to dig them out. But first one is a really famous study now where they take 1,000 asymptomatic people. So people who the only kind of prerequisite is that they're not suffering from back pain. They give them all an MRI. And the findings are that people's spines are absolutely rife with asymmetries and changes. And that's in a population of people who have no problems. And the other study is, I think it's something like 200 participants and 200 different therapists. And the therapists they weren't told what side of the body someone had pain on. And then they had to assess them and then just say what side that they were experiencing their symptoms on based on their findings. You know, they're looking at muscle tone and looking at posture, so on and so forth.
Study, isn't it? Yeah,
it is a decent study, and it's like 50-50. 50-50, yeah.
We'd get screwed by that. We'd get absolutely screwed if we had to do that.
But also something to mention, like, is that even those ones that we talked about, like, you know, AIM and even PRI parts of it, stuff like, there is stuff you can still take away that you could potentially utilize with a client as well. That's one thing as well. It's be wary of those that say, I mean, unless it's really batty and out there, unless it's really crazy and out there, then a lot of courses, even if you go away thinking, look, 99% of that was nothing to do with my philosophy or nothing that I can implement, you may find 1% of it that goes, oh, actually, I can see something in that. I'm gonna go down that path a tiny bit.
Yeah, for sure. I had a great bit of advice once when I was really, really young in the industry. Actually, it's from a lady who's now a massage therapist at Canary Wharf, KT, and she said, like, everyone adds value. Everyone adds value, and no one knows everything. And I think that's it's a really, really humble standpoint, but you've got to take that in mind. You know, these people have put together an incredibly usually well thought out approach, and just because it's littered with a lot of errors, it doesn't mean there can't be some facets of it that are going to help. And don't forget, I'm coming at the angle of pain, not performance. There is no two ways about it, that there are positions, and as it were, that are maybe biomechanically advantageous for movement. But I just obviously probably get the hint that I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I work in healthcare, and I think it's unethical to, quite frankly, just fearmonger people into these repeat treatments because you think you've spotted something. And maybe it's coming from a place where people are just uneducated, but typically speaking, I think these therapists know that, and it's just a case of cognitive dissonance. They associate their profession and their treatment approach with their identity, so any attack or change on that is an attack on themselves.
That brings us to a next question, which was, one second. I'd like to start this because I feel like I have to defend it for some reason. FMS, gimmick or valuable tool, pros and cons of FMS. Yeah. So for those people that don't know, we use FMS as part of our education pathway. Now, when it becomes a gimmick and it becomes an invaluable tool, is when you try to use it to answer a question that it's not designed for, personally. Now, what I mean by that is, for instance, if I wanted to hammer a nail in a wall, I probably wouldn't use an Allen key. And I'm not good at DIY, but I think that's true, right? So when people try to use FMS as a tool to say, this is how they're going to perform, or even along the lines of prevention of injury, right? Like, if you think that a total score is going to exactly tell you that is the injury likelihood of someone, then that's when, no, FMS is not a valuable tool. Now, where I think it adds value, personally, is confidence both from the client and trainer in what they're doing or what they're being prescribed. And secondly, is also confidence in themselves in doing a movement, and confidence in a PT saying, I think I know where I can go from here. For instance, I done a screen on a load of kids who play football. These kids complained massively on hamstring tightness, cramps during game, and some of them had hamstring injuries, of want of a better word. Generally speaking, a pulled hamstring. Went in, screened them. Well, no shit, their straight active leg raise was what we'd consider as inadequate on the FMS terms. I don't really use the grading system too much, but the inadequacy of like 1 or 2. Now, me showing them that on a piece of a kit that someone like Drogba has been pictured using, they loved it, first and foremost. Then, as a PT that's not part of rehab, I then get Gray Cook's fundamental philosophies on corrective exercise. I get some exercises from that I can implement that I feel confident in using, because I know Gray Cook's decent enough, I'm sure, and he knows what he's doing. So I feel confident in my prescription, because otherwise I don't know what I'm going to give them. But the biggest part of the puzzle is that 12 weeks later, we go back and screen them, they get better. But cramps in game, no injury in hamstrings, and no more tightness or pull hamstrings throughout that season. The reason being probably is not because of the FMS and the corrective exercise, but it's probably because it empowered the players, or more so got buy-in, that they actually started to train their hamstrings. They actually done something. It's probably what it was. Whereas before, they probably weren't doing anything to warm up because they're kids. The kids don't really care. They do whatever. So I think it's a tool to be used from a PT to go, I have confidence in, I'm not going to prescribe that exercise because I don't think they can do some fundamentals, so I'm going to do this exercise, gives them confidence. And more so for a client to go, I think that PT knows what they're doing. They didn't just come up with a blanket program. They watched me move a bit. They said, I'm going to start here. And actually, it's sod's law, or it's kind of no shit, where in 6 weeks' time, your movement's going to progress just by doing more movement. But if you're more confident in it, then you're probably going to get more buy-in from it. And that's it. That's how I see it as a tool, exercise inclusion tool, and buy-in, in a very short answer. That's me.
That was short. All right.
Yeah, that was really short, wasn't it?
I'll go. The FMS is an invaluable tool. Obviously, I've been quoted on saying that I don't use it that much, but I 100% use aspects of it. And I started off by screening similarly to the FMS, and all of my screen is based off either the FMS, the NSM, or some other PRI stuff. Is generally speaking is how I've gauged my screen together. And for what movements that I deem that somebody is going to do during my programming, I do basically a super regressed program as my screen, as a fundamental thing. But the FMS is invaluable for people who are coming out and have no idea about screening or haven't done a screen before. It gives numbers, which is great, especially for buy-in, like Josh said. It's an easy kind of tool to realise, 0 is bad, 1, 2, 3, 3 is good because it's high. All right, we need to get that. It gives a kind of red. It was a kind of red, or light amber, green light system, right? And it gives a soaring system afterwards. So 21 is immaculate mover. But also with the correctives of Gray Cook, as somebody's understanding of learning those 7 tests, 7, 8 tests, 7 tests. Yeah.
They've added a couple of like motor control stuff.
Added some, but traditionally it's 7 tests. 21 is all 3, sorry. It gives you a fundamental reasoning of how to program as well, of what probably the movement patterns that you're going to be programming somebody to go and do. And as the person moves, they've got to be better at these. So you've got to start thinking about it. Even if you didn't see the corrective list from Gray Cook, you've got to think about how that athlete is going to get better at those tests. And then you've got to use your brain to realise that, all right, so if somebody's doing a rotary stability assessment, we've got to get slightly better at rotary stability, and how we're going to fundamentally do that using exercise and not any gimmicks. So I think it's amazing as basically a programming tool, and that's how it should be used. It shouldn't be used as a be-all and end-all. It's not going to predict injury. It's not going to do that kind of thing. It's to give you a nice idea of where that person is in that snapshot of life.
And also to add is like that that's FMS. That's any screen. So it's not just limited. All that stuff's limited by FMS. If someone's created their own screen or whatever, it will still do the same. There's no screen out there that will go, well, that means you're going to be a top class athlete because you can jump this far or always jump this high. That's an assessment. That's different, right? So, but as you said, it's a standardized thing, and it's the only one out there that is standardized, and that's why one
of the best interviews that we ever had at Third Space was a guy called Sebastian, who works at the City, and he came in with his own screening system. And it was a upper and lower, push-pull, open and closed chain screening system. I thought that was great. He knew exactly what he was looking for. He knew what those kind of did, advantages, disadvantages of doing it well, how he was meant to perform. But it was a screening system that he developed, and he thought it worked well with his clients, and he had an end goal of where they should be, or what was deemed good and what was deemed bad, and how to correct them based off that. So it's that kind of thing. You can create your own, but I think it's an awesome starting point, and it's already set up and ready to go.
Henry, crush our dreams.
No, I'm not going to crush your dreams. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an FMS lover. I'm not an FMS hater at all. Since we started adopting it and since I did the course, I thought, yeah, I'm going to start implementing it. Main reason because ultimately, if you do FMS, if you do SEBS 1, if you do what's the FRC one, FCA, I don't know.
FRA.
They've got something, yeah. But whatever you do, you're still not. When are you going to have more information about your client? After that screen, or in 6 months of training them? 6 months of training them. There's no assessment that can give you every single thing that you need, and to be honest with you, I kind of tweaked FMS for myself.
Yep.
For the sake of scoring it, I do actually score it because I think people like numbers, and it's an easy motivation tool. But I'll do a screen, and then I'll give them a little bit of coaching to see if they can improve it, and that gives me an idea of how body aware are they and can they respond to coaching cues. And I think those two things are actually pretty handy. It's funny, it gets digged out so much, but no one ever starts the sentence with, do you know what, fair play for FMS for trying to design something that can be tested. They have done that, and they have modified it. I think that me as an osteopath, if someone came to me and said, Josh has got shoulder pain, I've done this FMS with him, this is his score, I would already be like, okay, well, this person understands basic biomechanical language. I think that's really, really valuable. It can start a conversation between a trainer and the client, and then a trainer, and then a healthcare professional as well. Let's not beat around the bush. People want to be feeling like they're being looked after, and it is meeting that kind of requirement to be listened to, but I guess via movement. That's philosophical, isn't it? But I just think it's really, really trendy to rip it, whereas actually people just miss the point altogether. It's just a look at movement. It's an idea of general movement well-being. Is this person safe? Is this not? So yeah, I think it's absolutely fine, and I don't think it's wasted time either. I think in 6 months you're going to look back at that 10 minutes and think, oh, God blimey, we could be so much better off by now. A lot of the FMS content itself and their philosophies I don't necessarily agree with. They obviously are fairly anti-compensation, and they have these ideas that certain positions are just definitely going to lead to problems, definitely going to lead to pain, or at least that's what's in the literature they provide with the course. And I'm not with that. But I am with it on other things. And blimey, look, I mean, you can answer this on your next podcast, Tom, but we've got our next recruitment day on Tuesday, and the number of trainers who turn up and they don't have a movement screen, what they have is a warm-up. So blimey, if you've got nothing, then FMS is definitely better than what you've got. And if someone has got something, catastrophic going wrong with them, then it will show you.
Can I say though on that, because some people do listen to the podcast and then they come to the assessment center. So they've heard us talk about FMS and say there's some good uses. So what they try and do is blag it, and then they'll come and pretend that they can do FMS, but it actually digs them a deeper hole. We would have probably preferred them to turn around and go, listen, I don't really do a screen, but can you show me maybe? Or do you know what I mean when we do assess them? So don't just like do it willy-nilly and just make up your own scoring criteria or whatever. But you can. But as long as you've got a justification for it, is probably it.
Do it more than once than in first time in the interview would be one of the big things.
Oh yeah.
Go, Henry. Hand up. Go.
One thing I would say is the whole any pain and a zero thing. So I have modified that, and as you both know, but the listeners maybe don't know, is that we discussed that on one of our internal modules. I am not saying if someone's got shoulder pain, just ignore them, but pain is quite a normal thing. It's feedback from the body, and some people have just never done these movements before, so it might be a little bit sensitive. I seem to remember kind of like 7 or 8 years ago, didn't Mike Boyle have like he would score it with or without pain, so it'd be like 2 with pain.
That's that comes from SFMA. They do a plus thing, a PN thing. It's called pain. Yeah, that's pain.
Someone could be
pain dysfunctional, pain non-dysfunctional. That's part of the SFMA stuff.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't
but question on that, or for me, you're a medical professional, so you understand that, yeah, and you know the difference, or you can kind of assess in your professional opinion the difference between sensitivity and pain. Personally, for me as a PT, if a client says to me they got pain, from my standpoint and my kind of barriers, I'm going to turn around and go, okay, that's cool. I'm probably going to avoid that then, because I don't really know what's going on, because I don't really understand pain.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, you can use simple guides like verbal analog scale. How many out of 10 is it? And anything under 5, maybe you could assume is sensitivity, or you could just say, okay, it's painful. Would you like to stop? Is it so bad that it's going to stop you moving here? The only thing is what we don't want to encourage is someone who is perfectly healthy, hasn't exercised in ages, will probably calm down within about 2 weeks of exercise, and they've been referred to a physiotherapist, and you've got a client there who's enthusiastic about starting their fitness journey, and all they need is a little bit of sensible loading and a lack of overhead movements, as an example. So I know what you mean. I've got the confidence to know what I'm dealing with, and B, people have got confidence in me that if I say do it, it's probably not going to cause them problems. But I still think you can be sensible. You can bring your 5 out of 10 right the way down to 1 or 2 out of 10. You shouldn't be grading people on a 0 if they got 1 out of 10.
That was just a dig at CrossFit. Sensible loading and lack of overhead movements. Are you crazy, Henry? It's just CrossFit.
I love CrossFit.
You love CrossFit.
Me and Doug think it's the best thing that's ever happened to our industry, and I'm not even bullshitting.
All right.
And I'm with Doug, and Doug's very respected, so I'm safe. So,
He's very respected. It's right. Yeah, we refer out to him a lot. Basically, whenever I don't ask Henry for advice, I'm going to ask Doug.
So, a question following on from FMS was someone asking on my thing, what's all these lines of force and all this stuff that you're going on to? I think one thing to just... Right. No, well, wait a minute. Just defend me.
I'm going to get some water.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go as well, okay?
Just to defend me as a person, Henry mentioned this before. When I'm learning something, what I do have to do is immerse myself in it by just kind of being obsessed.
We know, mate. We know.
I have to, because otherwise I won't give it the credit that it might have, or I won't understand the disadvantages of it. So when I started to learn FMS, I just did loads of it, even to myself, to understand it. Done the same thing with FRC, done a little bit with PRI, then now I've done the similar thing with RTS and mechanics. But I have to do that, otherwise I won't learn it. And also, I don't like to throw shade at anything if I haven't actually tried it myself. That's just the way it is. So anyway, what is it? Is a very simple way of saying it's exercise mechanics. It's understanding where a machine is heaviest and where it's lightest on our body, where we are weakest and where we are strongest in the movement. And I think one of the biggest applicable parts of it is knowing something called a moment arm, and knowing, well, what tissue am I targeting? Even though a front squat is quad dominant, for most people it's probably hip dominant, which means I can make a full all-around program based on that, rather than just based on movements if I don't understand what those movements do on tissues. and that's it. But regardless of that, I'm going to be totally honest in saying that it is probably one of the best courses I've ever been on. And Michael Gordon, with his stuff, is probably one of the best teachers that I've learned from, just because of the way he is. Again, hypnotic tones and as such.
He's
and
a
actually,
bloody good teacher.
he's great, and it's just this. It reignites a passion for it, and I will always, shout at the rooftops about RTS, and I don't get anything for it. But I do believe that if your thing is body comp, or if your thing is all about stimulating specific tissues in a specific way, that is the route to go. There's no other course that will teach you more about body comp apart from nutrition. That's my thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, Michael Gordon applies it to loads of different stuff, but if I was to try and tell you why and how, I'd probably get it wrong, so I don't want to slaughter the method. But that's basically what it is. It's just it's biomechanics, but related to gym exercises rather than sports. That's how I'd probably put it.
And the person, most importantly, right?
Oh, massively about the person, which is, and that's the biggest thing. The biggest two questions that he'll always ask is, who's the client and what's the goal? They're the two things before.
That's your tagline. I've got mine, you've got yours.
No, that's Michael's tagline. I've just stolen it.
Oh, jeez, just a different one.
Well, the boy from Bow. That was a
I'm not from Bow, mate. I'm Limehouse, but anyway.
Limehouse.
But yeah, that's all it is. That's what RTS is. And if anything, it's a real good tool for understanding anatomy. Like you think you know anatomy. If you think you know insertions, origins, planes of movement, go on that course and you'll soon realise, damn, as a PT, I need to up my game on this stuff. 100%.
Yeah, sure.
Which is great. I think that's what we need. But yeah, that's it.
That's it. Done. Bam. We haven't really anything to talk about that. I mean, my master's degree was half biomechanics, and I've not done RTS. Obviously, I would have a snippet into the window of it, and by listening to Michael Golden, going to his talks, and then just, we know, Dan's very good friends with the muscle mentors and how they apply it, and basically, and we see Josh ramble on about it all the time. So it's interesting, but obviously, well, I guess we've spoken, myself and Dan are coming from maybe the 90% of the population who's not going to set up like that, and with them use very basic fundamental stuff to get people moving. It is 100% what Josh just said. If you're really interested in body comp and body movement and that kind of stuff, that's the route to go down.
Yeah. And I think I go down. Listen, I'm rabbit hole so much. I'm at the tea party with the Mad Hatter, right?
Yeah.
So I will take time to set up. I'll get loads of straps, and I'll get magnets. I'll do all this stuff, right? But what you can do with a client who's not prepared to do that, first of all, you probably could do it first time and take you some time. You note down how you set it up and you do it, but not all clients will buy into that stuff. But if anything, it's just saying, well, if you've not challenged the full range of movement in a muscle, for instance, in a row particularly, so when we do a pull-in movement row, we are strongest in the lengthened tissue, we're weakest in the shortened. So just complement two exercises. Find an exercise that overloads the shortened tissue, find an exercise that overloads the lengthened tissue. Because if you've got an exercise where you can still get to the shortened range and you're strongest in the lengthened range, you've probably not overloaded fully the lengthened range. So how about combine two exercises that may not have what's called a full range challenge, just to give a full program for body composition. So it's not even, you don't have to start setting up straps. When people geek out on it, people go a bit too far with it. But it's just, well, if you do that, couple that with this other exercise, and that will develop a full program. That's all. And also minimization of joint forces and all that jazz. But yeah, there we go.
I feel like Henry needs like a bit of cocoa or something like that.
I just had some.
Yeah, just a little bit of hot cocoa. Whilst we've been talking, Henry has managed to put on a quilt, like a woolly hat, a jumper, get a drink. What's the matter, mate? Is there no heating in your house?
I don't.
Oh, I'm just glued here.
All right.
No, I can't put my heating on anyway. I'm not on Playboy wages like you Marlbon lot.
Tom's in a penthouse.
That's where I'm sitting
That's
right
it. I can see the help in the matter.
I've got one last question from my guys, and then
Your gang. And then we've got a question that we were meant to ask Carl, but we'll have a little dive.
No, I've got a reply from Carl.
Have you? I haven't looked at my phone.
I've got two. So if you get your reply from Carl, and then I think I've got two questions, and I'll get that up.
Okay, so I can't remember what we said about Carl. It was a long time ago, but basically, Carl is incredibly experienced, and he's worked in here and in the States as well. So my question for him, as it's maybe a bit deep.
Fanboy, yeah,
elder
as a complete fanboy. You should have heard Henry when we came on the show. He was like, "Where's Carl?
Oh,
Is he not
where's
here?
Carl?
Where's Carl? I speak to you two enough. Where's Carl? Is he
Carl?
not here?" It's like,
Carl!
jeez.
Oh, can you hear me, Carl? Anyway, so I wanted to ask him, because I think every year we get the kind of question of, what are the current fitness trends, yada yada yada, and generally speaking, I think PTs are quite wise to those fitness trends and don't succumb to them. But I was just wanting to ask him what he thinks he has seen in trends of what PTs are good at and what PTs are not particularly good at. So I asked him how things have changed really throughout his career. So I'll just read it out. So Carl said, and I'm not going to put on the Midlands accent.
Please do.
I would say trainers have improved in terms of concepts such as programming. They can structure a session and program it in a scientifically sensible and logical way. And the basic kind of entry-level knowledge surrounding nutrition has definitely improved as well. What he thinks we need to be better at, broadly speaking, is I think that trainers are generally poor at doing... Oh, sorry, he's got a bit of a typo there. I think what trainers are generally poor at doing is applying basic movement science, such as kinesiology and biomechanics, and relating it to their clients and problem solving. Kind of hints at what Josh has just spoken about with RTS, really, is, client can't do that. Fundamental movement. I need them to be able to do a fundamental movement. A, why can't they do it? And B, what else could I do, right? So I guess, we've had the age of information and now we need to know what to do with it. Did I just finish that all in one?
Yeah, that's more into the judgment of what we teach as well within third space, of how to progress, regress on the fly, and be like, actually, I'm not going to make my client wait for I don't know, for 5-10 minutes until some piece of equipment. And it's like, actually, we're just going to do an upper body push. Therefore, we're just going to push something with our upper body. Doesn't really matter what it is. We'll do it at the correct intensity. We'll probably be an okay load. We're not going to lose any sleep about it. I think that's what people worry about a hell of a lot if we're, say, not in a gym, kind of basically of our thinking, I guess.
Don't you think as well, when something goes wrong, people immediately think about the glory ball, like the complicated answer?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with just regressing it to something really, really basic?
100%. Because realising that you're not going to lose any gains, you're going to be fine. Probably you're not taking a step back. You're probably going to progress just a little bit, not as maximally or as optimally as we wanted, but we're still making good progress. I think that's what we need to relay across that if you've got to make that decision on the fly as well, or change something, which is absolutely fine. Josh, you look like you want to say something. You're bursting.
No, I'm done. Yeah. Yes, that's my answer.
There we go. Good. Are we happy with Carl's answer, Henry? Or has he paused?
He's blinking very slowly. Know what's going on. He'll catch up soon. So I'll just move on to the next question because it looks like Henry has got Wi-Fi of a potato. But the next question was, and I get it quite a lot, either at the assessment days as well, or I get it in DMs and stuff like that quite a lot on Instagram. And that is obviously, how can I join the education team, or what do you look for in recruiting educators? How does First Space recruit educators? In all honesty, like it's a bit of it's not a hard process, but it is, like, as in, first and foremost, you've got to get into Third Space. So we don't just hire externally at the moment educators. You've got to be deemed to be an elite personal trainer. For those that don't know, we have two different types of personal trainer within Third Space. We have just personal trainer and we have elite personal trainer. And what constitutes you as an elite, generally speaking, is a specialist area with a qualification to match, such as, typically speaking, a master's or something like RTS alongside a nutrition course for body comp, etc., etc. At least 5 years industry experience, but that's at the very least. We generally ask for 2 years at Third Space, although that can kind of be fast-tracked if you're really good and we see something really potential in you. But then from there, really from that, you've already got the fundamentals, hopefully, as a teacher. It's then, to become an educator in Third Space, what I mainly look for personally, and then I'll ask you guys what you would look for, but is, first of all, a critical mind in not just slating something or not saying this is the best, but actually being able to critically think about anything that someone asks you, whether that be a Theragun or a foam roller or whatever. Secondly is supportive, and I think that's the biggest one. What education should be and what we should be doing is supporting people, not saying what people are doing right or wrong. We should be the person that any PT can come up to and go, what do you think of this? And we entice more questions from them, and we entice more thinking from them. And then just a generally nice person. That's it. Someone who's just generally nice, as in they can hold a conversation with someone, they can gain respect of the room, and they just generally have good people skills. And quite clearly, I just inherited Tom, so I didn't hire Tom. But yeah, that's it.
Very true.
Yeah, basic soft skills sometimes is the biggest one, right? It's empathy. It's knowing that actually we don't have all the answers. And do you know what? You might be able to teach me something when you're asking me this question. You've asked me a question in a way that I've learned something. You don't have to be the smartest person. You just have to be able to entice someone or infuse someone to be educated and have something you're passionate about enough that you can educate someone on it. But yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Yeah, I think my take on it, especially looking at us four, we do not have to be the smartest person in the room. Clearly to be. But yeah, Josh did inherit me, unfortunately. But I saw it as an avenue pre third space takeover, I guess. I started doing education weekly and fortnightly with the Marylebone lot, even when we didn't have a structure. I think Carl actually did that as well with the Soho lot when we didn't really have a structure, because it just kind of needed, and we needed a bit of philosophy and know-how for people critically thinking and realising that there was other stuff out there. And it did. I mean, we've all got further degrees, right? So the critical mindset it's kind of taught into us heavily a lot by looking at research, deciding what we think is right and what we think is good for apply. So I think that's the biggest one in terms of if you're going to get to the education team and realising that you're going to decide we're not going to decide exactly what the trainers are going to be doing, because they can decide that for themselves, but giving them the facility and the platform to help them decide where they're going to be or what route they want to go down, because we've all got different routes and specialties. We all teach different stuff on PT5 because that's our thing, and other people are going to be way better for rehab than we ever will be, even at the lower level. So if they're PT5 and up to elite level, so I think it's just giving them the platform to succeed would be my way of an education coordinator.
And also, I forgot to mention the biggest thing is you've got to love it. As in, if someone turned around to me and said, "Josh, tomorrow you're speaking in front of 500 people," I would be so excited, and even get a bit nervous. Don't get me wrong, but I absolutely love it. I buzz off of it. Just talking and public speaking. That's what I love. Actually, if someone says you've only got 2 learners, I'm a bit okay, cool, that's cool. But I prefer massive groups. And if your number one thing is talking in front of people, as in, I don't like that, or I get a bit, do you get nervous and all this too much? Yeah, you do get a bit nervous. But if it really scares you, teaching's probably not for you. If you don't love that, or if you don't have to be on your toes all the time, because someone's going to fry something at you, someone is going to heckle at some point. If you don't buzz off of that and you can't spin that around, unfortunately, it's probably not for you, in all honesty.
And we've realised that for people who've been a little bit kind of apprehensive coming on this show. So we go out to a few thousand people, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, but what if we say something's dumb? What if it's not going to be that?" It's absolutely fine. That's why we're here to make mistakes, and we're going to learn from it. But not everything we said in this show is going to be correct. So, but we got better at it as we went along. But you've got to do it first, 100%.
Henry?
Now you're back, and it seems like your internet is not frozen. I don't know. You made some interesting faces through there.
Oh, I've just got an interesting face. The one that Josh said that resonates with me is a critical mind. I've already hinted at my dismay at talking to people who really have become indoctrinated into whatever cult that they're part of, and they just can't see any kind of benefit to anything else, or they can't receive any criticism themselves. You've got to be mature enough to know that there are no absolutes whatsoever, and that you've got to be human about it as well. So yeah, a big thing for me is having a critical mind. It's not actually, I know Josh referenced with the elite stuff particularly that you need certain academic qualifications, but some of the most knowledgeable people I know are just book read, and they make great teachers. But what I would say is studying a master's does give you an incredibly critical mind, and if you do a master's, you will have some dreams broken. There's no two ways about it, and I think that's quite kind of obviously humbling, but mentally hardening as well, and prepares you for more criticism and doubt, which is only a good thing, really. So that's the biggest thing for me. Is there's plenty of people who are very, very knowledgeable, but they just guide everything back into having conversations about stuff that they believe in and know about.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing when it comes to education now, what we're seeing is because of what we're doing at Third Space, and just allowing people to be educated, partnering with the right companies, etc., and making sure our PTs don't have to go anywhere else for education. I think that's having a bigger ripple effect. Like Henry, of someone that works for quite a competitor company who's now we need to do that. I was approached by another competitor company to kind of try and poach me in a sense, but it didn't happen. But people are starting to look out, and I think more and more, give it a few years, the industry is going to have to follow suit. And the idea is that now every gym out there, I reckon, in the next 3-4 years will have to have some form of internal education pathway or process, because PTs are demanding it now, and that's what you need to do. But then that means is the roles are only just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and soon it's just going to be a given. Like there's a PT, like there's a fitness manager, there's always an educator within a club, and that's been the whole goal of ours really when we first started education, is to elevate the industry and to go, do you know what, it's bigger than what we do. It's a bit bigger than Third Space in a sense, but Third Space are always going to be the best. We're always going to be one that pioneer it, because luckily we got a company who back us for it, and let's face it, give us a decent enough budget to do that and allow us that kind of creative space. But it's just going to get bigger. So if in the next 2 months you're not an educator at Third Space, because I've only got so much budget, and I need to keep some of it for myself so I can eat. But I think it's only going to get more and more. So if your goal is to become an educator, go and learn that skill, go and get your tutoring qualifications and stuff. And I think there'll be more and more opportunities as it comes. I think, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. I think anyway. That's my own thing. I hope it's going to get bigger.
I think it will, because there's just an increased demand to get things right. It's as simple as that. Let's not beat around the bush. It's very, very difficult for a personal trainer to continue to earn an income whilst they're at university. So we're going to need to provide plenty of professional development in a way that is of a good enough standard, rather that sort of satisfies people's hunger and thirst for education, but not so disruptive that they need to get a degree. And
look, let's face it, the days of self-employment and freelance within fitness is going to come to an end. It's just a given. Soon, in the next couple of years, self-employment will be no more in the fitness industry. It will be very rare, because HMRC see us as being, or this industry as being, one of the highest risks when it comes to tax evasion. So they're going to force big companies, and quite rightly, to basically employ their staff. So even though you may get paid the same, because you can't muck around with expenses, or, I'm not saying anyone lies, but uses legal loopholes to reduce their tax liability, you are going to see that hit your pocket. So companies are going to have to do something to compensate for that in regards of benefits. And one of those benefits should be education, because you can get a whole host of benefits from that going, I can save between 5 and 10 grand a year by not having to pay for my own education, and that they're going to provide that for me. So I think they're going to have to do it, because that is a retention tool at the end of the day.
100%. And we're seeing it already. So it's going to happen. Absolutely. Post Chapter, have we got any more questions that we want to fire through?
One more. And it's just, are we going to be educating outside of Third Space? In other words, not just staff members, courses, etc. The first thing to announce, I guess, is we will be at Elevate this year. So the Third Space, we were at Body Power last year. That still may happen. Don't know yet. Still got to be having conversations, but we're definitely going to be in Elevate for 2 days, where it's going to be a blend again of us guys, obviously, but then other speakers coming in. So that's a free event to attend as well in London at the Excel. It's going to be great. Our own stage. We're going to be the main fitness education provider. So we're going to do that. And then, look, I'm sure that some of you boys are potentially going to start branching out and, trying to impart your knowledge on the world, I guess. For me, I'm too busy. I'm at third space. I've got, I'm running a creche that is the education coordinators. So, I've got to look after the kids, don't I?
Yes, keep your eyes peeled. I think it's probably time for me to do a nice weekend with the LD&M boys, I'm sure. So keep an eye out next year. If you follow Josh, then I'm sure he'll make a song and dance about it, because he's been digging me in the ribs to get on with it as well. So we're going to do a kind of a foundations in exercise rehabilitation next year. But other than that, we, as I say, be at Elevate, and we're on social media as well. So if you do have questions, fire them across.
Saying that, there is obviously the LD&M nutrition course that only I will always teach, and that's 3 to 4 times a year.
Oh, I thought me and Henry were taking that over.
We'll talk about that offline. We won't cross the dreams right now. And I'm sure we'll have Tom back his stuff as well.
Can you imagine if me and Henry taught nutrition? That'd be great.
Yeah, right. I'm going to do it.
Panic.
Let's just see what happens.
Protein.
Like,
And then, I'll just teach stuff about rehab.
Yeah,
just FMS. That'll do.
Just switch around, be right.
I'm sure we'll have you back next year, Tom. I'm sure we'll be doing some form of screening.
I'm
sure something will
myself and Mr. Meek will be speaking or doing courses in the not too distant future, especially with Daniel's biceps and banter stuff. So we might be doing stuff with Mike, especially in terms of coaching, mentoring, and doing all that kind of stuff. Especially when we're realizing that there's more importance of crossing the online and in-person PT realm, and realizing that we know it's an industry that's always going to be there, and the mix is what we have in our show. So if people there will be stuff from myself and Dan in terms of PT mentorship. That will definitely be coming. So, eyes peeled, guys. So you look like you want your hands up again, mate. Fucking.
Sorry, I've got one last question. This is my own question. If a PT was to ask right now, give me one course that you recommend I do on your specialist area, or whatever. There's that one course that you go do that. I think that will set you up pretty well. What one course would that be?
In our specialist area?
It could be anything. I don't mind. Whatever. One course. It has to be it can't just be go and do a nutrition course. You have to say the exact course. And I can start, but no guesses as to what I'm going to say.
You're going to say London Muscle Nutrition course.
I should say that.
You're not going to plug yourself. Jesus. All right. Okay.
I'm not, because that'd just be too much. I mean, obviously that is the case, but for a personal trainer, I honestly believe it's got to be RTS. If I was to promote one,
organise this so Tom plugs me, I plug Josh, and Josh plugs Tom.
Yeah, I could have done it so much better.
No.
All right.
No,
so,
but obviously, if it was nutrition, I would probably say either do the LD&M nutrition course or go and just study a degree, because there's anything else in between is not. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, or RTS, I would probably say is foundational from a lot of PTs personally.
Okay. So I'm going to go with 2.
No. Whoa. Oh no, I did do 2. Fair play. I done 2. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, if I'm called the politician, the fence sitter, then I've got it. So I would say if you're really, really interested in biomechanics, personally, I would do the Gray Institute course, the CAFS. I think it stands for Certificate in Applied Functional Science. Best value for money course that I have ever done. It's like over 50 hours of video. It's like $400 or something. It was absolutely brilliant. That being said, I was really, really impressed with the Exos Phase 1 course, I must admit. I know that's probably a bit of an easy kind of suggestion, but the strength of Exos is how well organised it is, and if you are unclear and you want some methodology rather than just a bunch of new toys, then you certainly will get it from that. And look, it's internationally accredited, so I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. And if you can't attend one of their on-site ones, I think their online version of the same course is also pretty good, but it is the same price, so I lean towards the in-person one.
I mean, I'm not going to cop out because I think the Exos Phase 1, do it, 100%. There are slightly different things that you will learn, especially doing applied performance in the UK compared to doing it from the States. So Exos is very States orientated, and maybe there are certain things. Obviously, Henry was on the course with me, and there was stuff that I've learned S&C here, which is traditionally from the UKCA, which I was like, what about this? They do it this way, we do it this way, and it just hasn't crossed the Atlantic, basically. What tends to happen is we do a lot more research in the UK, and they do a lot more applied, which is great, but for pro sports, awful for us. And then personal trainery. I realise Henry doesn't always, buy this lad, but the first ever personal trainer course workshop thing I did in person was Dean Somerset's and Tony Gentlecore's hip and shoulder blueprint. And I love Dean Somerset. I think he's a really intelligent guy, and Tony G is just a good coach. He's a good strength coach and he keeps within his boundaries, and he's good at doing that. So I thought, as a personal trainer and having fundamental knowledge of, they go through basically how we coach and how we do things, is they take little bits that have worked for them and they've smashed it all together in terms of a hip and shoulder blueprint. And it's all based off strength correctives, basically. There is some stuff that you're going to be like, nah, I don't really agree with that, it's fine. But I'll vouch for it as I've seen the first one. I did the first ever one in the UK, and then must have been about 6 years ago. And I've seen the rehash of them doing it a couple of times, and yeah, it's just a nice course. I still apply stuff that I took away 6 years ago. Yeah, go. Henry.
Just in case there are any healthcare people listening, number one course for me would be Greg Lehman's course. I think it's called Reconciling Biomechanics with Pain Science. It's obviously a very, very broad topic, but if you're a little bit lost in terms of, pain science is saying one thing, biomechanics and the world is saying another thing, Greg does a really good job of, as the course says, sort of reconciling the two sort of worlds, and he gives you an absolute ton of access to material as well. So I really, really recommend that.
Amazing. All right, well, apparently one of our fitness managers wants to know who would win in a fight out of all the third space education team. And we're going to go for Carl, right?
Yeah, he's brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But there is a caveat, isn't there, Henry? What's the caveat?
If Josh could make it to his phone in time, he's definitely got a dodgier phone book. So
I'm East London. What can I say?
It's very
I've
true.
14 golf clubs.
Mate, so have I, but I still think...
I've got golf clubs as well.
I've got you see him in my log cabin of games, remember?
God, that time I didn't even tell you this.
Right, so
Josh's man cave is basically a collection of all his things that he's got. Oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do it. He's got a fixie. He's got a set of left-handed golf clubs. He's right-handed.
There's a mess kit.
What else has he got in there?
A wire balance kit. A
lifting platform. He thinks he can lift.
DJ turntables.
See what I mean? It's like when we all start having midlife crises, I guess we'll go to Josh, and Josh will be like, "Mate, I was banging that in my teens."
Completed it, mate. Oh, and a guitar. I've got a guitar in there as well.
Yeah, probably some football stickers.
No, football's not really for me.
No, you're not really into sport, are you?
Mine was an acoustic. Mine's acoustic. What's your bass? I bet yours is bass. You look like a bass player.
No,
yeah.
I've got 2 of my 5 here, but they're like...
You've got 5?
Yeah, I got 5 guitars. But there's...
Why? What, because one of them sounds different to the other?
Yeah, Josh, yeah.
No.
Yeah, 100%.
They do.
Oh, God.
My dad's guitar collection's pretty repulsive, but
I'm sure I'd have a lovely conversation with your dad. Then it'd be amazing. Yeah, I play a lot of guitars, Josh. You know.
Hold on, I thought you two had the same. This is.
Oh yeah.
So hold on a minute. We worked out earlier on. I've always had this joke, right, that Henry and Tom have the same dad. And I can't remember what happened. I think Henry's dad was going out, so was Tom's mum, and I went, hold on a minute, they're obviously seeing each other. But now we've worked out that Tom is definitely his son because he's obviously now the same skills. Like guitar, it's getting weirder and weirder, mate. This is getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'll say.
I mean,
Brothers.
On that bombshell.
Do they both have the same?
I think they both have the same birthday. Yeah. And we were both elsewhere for some course that Josh wanted us to do. We were
Dad's birthday.
It was Dad's birthday, and we were like, hang on a minute.
And then more and more, it's just getting weirder and weirder.
It is weirder and weirder. All right. On that note, I think we may have pushed past the first time. Well, first time Josh came on our show, it was about an hour and a half. I think we've almost hit that. Basically, I think what we should do next month as well, because we're all on a trip together to Boston to go catch up with Mr. Mike Boyle. So we will reconvene or maybe do a show from Boston. We can possibly do that, or on the way back. A plane cast, if we will. Give us something to do over the
I'm not sitting next to any of you on the plane.
I realise that
Tell me that right now.
Josh is going straight into business and first class.
Obviously.
Because it's his budget and he's decided to do that. So,
I'm not coming back. I'm going to get a job with the Boston Celtics.
very true. I'm staying out there, so it's fine.
You guys are in the cattle cart, and then I'm basically in the pilot's chair.
Exactly.
Oh well, I better say my goodbyes before we take off.
Yeah.
All right, we might do a show based off what we had seen in Boston and the applied nature of Mr. Mike Boyle. That'd be pretty cool. He's nice the guy. All right, thanks chaps for coming on. We will hopefully have Mr. Carl Wilson back or on next time with dulcet tones. Anything you'd like to say? Leave us with something. No, wonderful.
No, that's it.
That's it. All right.
To leave you with, boys, make sure you're in work on time tomorrow, otherwise you're both fired. There you go.
Brilliant. We're not seeing each other tomorrow. We're good. All right. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you with Daniel next week.